Shalom. All praises and glory be unto Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, Bashem HaKakwadash. Double honors to the elder apostles at Great Millstone who rule well and who have taught us truth. Shalom to you, Akim, that's laboring in all truth and sincerity. And also shalom to the few Akwaf that believe in Yahweh Bashem Yahushua. Now in this video, as said at camp, I said that I would address the split of all the 12 tribes of Israel, and touch on how the split came, because for those of you new brothers that's just waking up, and even the few Akwaf, but mainly you brothers, this truth is really for the brethren, to receive. And you women, you need husbands, but that's another subject for another time. But the point being, for the brethren, the Akim, the split came, and I'm going to address the split. And notice how you go to the book of Hebrews and also Ezekiel, the 37th chapter, where it talks about the two covenants. Where it said I will make the Most High said he would make a covenant with the house of Israel and also the house of Judah, or the children of Israel and the children of Judah. And matter of fact, I'm going to go to that first. Let's address that first, because I think that'll be a good starting point. And then I'm going to go to the split. Get a few precepts on the split. So this is Ezekiel. And I'm going to jump down a bit to the split when it came. All right. Ezekiel 37:21. And I'm going to read down. It says, "And say unto them, Thus saith the Lord Power, Behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone, and will gather them on every side, and bring them into their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king to them all. And there shall be no more two nations, neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms anymore at all." Right. So, excuse me. Let me get some of the drink real quick. It has a reflex for some reason. Excuse me. So right there, it mentions that we should be that we should neither be two nations anymore. All right. Now, how do we become two nations? Well, those of us that descend from the northern tribes, which are the so-called Latino or Hispanics, and the so-called indigenous to America, so-called Native American, and Seminole Indians, Tainos. We was kicked out of our land before the Southern Kingdom. Now, I'm gonna go to 2 Kings. Let's see here. 2 Kings. Bear me 1 second. I'm gonna jump down a bit to the point, because we went off. All right, we went off, and you had the golden calf that was basically the golden calf was which was brought from Egypt, or that custom was held in Egypt. One of the idols of the Egyptians, and you had it where Jake. Well, I'm gonna say northern tribes. It was within our tents, and it caused us to sin. All right, 2 Kings 10:29. Howbeit from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin, Jehu departed not from after them, to wit the golden calves that were in Bethel. Bethel is Bayath Allah, meaning house of power. It says, and that were in Dan. And Yahweh said to Jehu, because thou hast done well executing that which is right in mine eyes. Well, that was the point right there, because that's going into something else. But pretty much, Jeroboam had caused us northern tribes, he led us to go off. All right, with the golden calves and everything. And so, pretty much, the Heavenly Father became wroth with us. And but you know what? Let me read down a little bit, because yeah, I'll keep reading, because this is a good point. Verse 30, and Yahweh said to Jehu, because thou hast done well in executing that which is right in mine eyes, and hast done unto the house of Ahab according to all that was in mine heart, thy children of the fourth generation shall sit on the throne of Israel. But Jehu took no heed to walk in the law of Yahweh, power of Israel, with all his heart, for he departed not from the sins of Jeroboam, which he made Israel to sin. In those days Yahweh began to cut Israel short, and Hazael smote them in all the coasts of Israel. So I wanted to read on, because it was a continuance of sins and iniquities that was piled up on us, and ultimately it led to us to be removed out of the Most High's sight, which is the land of Israel. All right, let's get that real quick. That caused the Heavenly Father to remove us out of his sight. All right. Excuse me. Let's go to 2 Kings 23. That's a good one. It says, and Yahweh said, I will remove Judah also out of my sight, as I have removed Israel, and will cast off this city, Jerusalem, which I have chosen, and the house of which I said my name shall be there. And that's the Heavenly Father, when he was getting ready to move, Judah out of the land too, but notice he said that as he had removed Israel, meaning us northern tribes. All right, and where did we go? From the land, we went into the captivity under the Assyrians. All right, the Assyrians led us away captives. All right, under it was Hoshea during that time, and it was Shalmaneser the fifth, that came up against us and took us away. All right, let's go to the split. Let's go to the split. 1 Kings 11. Going to jump down a bit. Let's go right to when the split came. King Solomon had sinned. And the Heavenly Father had told him he would rend the kingdom from him. So we're going to go to that. 1 Kings 11. All right, we're going to start right here. I believe, yep, come. 1 Kings 11. And Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and Ephrathite of Zerida, Solomon's servant, whose mother's name was Zeruiah, a widow woman, even he lifted up his hand against the king. And this was the cause that he lifted up his hand against the king. Solomon built Millo and repaired the breaches of the city of David his father. And the man Jeroboam was a mighty man of valor. And Solomon, seeing the young man that he was industrious, he made him ruler over all the charge of the house of Joseph. And it came to pass at that time, when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem, that the prophet Ahijah, the Shilonite, found him in the way. And he had clad himself with a new garment. And they two were alone in the field. And Ahijah caught the new garment that was on him and rent it in 12 pieces. And he said to Jeroboam, take thee 10 pieces, for thus saith Yahweh, the power of Israel, behold, I will rend the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and will give 10 tribes to thee. So, this is the split right here. That was symbolic because the new garment being torn into 12 pieces was represented each tribe, a piece for each tribe. You had it where he threw Jeroboam 10 of them. All right, and then it was 2 pieces left, which that was Judah and Levi. And then you go into the account of Benjamin. Benjamin actually came back and stayed with Judah and Levi. All right, that's how it eventually became known as the 3 tribes of the southern kingdom: Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. All right, then the rest from Simeon to Issachar. We all remain with a part of the northern tribes. All right. So initially Benjamin went. He did go. When you go into the story, it says, and he said to Jeroboam, I'm at verse 31, and he said to Jeroboam, take thee 10 pieces, for thus said Yahweh, the power of Israel, behold, I will rend the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and will give 10 tribes to thee, but he shall have 1 tribe for my servant David's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel. So, Judah being the lead tribe, Levi being the priest tribe, the priest tribe stayed with the lead tribe. And so that was the split right there. All right, you had infighting going on between Jeroboam and Rehoboam. Rehoboam being Solomon's son. He was, lineage-wise next in line to take the throne behind his father Solomon. All right, so the split came. All right, now let's go to Isaiah, the 11th chapter. I'm gonna jump down. Let's see. Isaiah chapter 11, starting at verse 11, it says, I'll start at 10 actually. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious. And the Gentiles speaking about is Israelite foreigners. And it shall, verse 11, and it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. And you notice, it mentioned Assyria, because again, you go into what's that, 2 Kings 17. It was mentions about the Assyrians, how they came up against us and took us away captives. And 2nd Esdras, the 13th chapter, starting about the 40th verse, we went to captivity. All right, we went to captivity, and from Assyria, we came over here to the place as North, Central, and South America. You see, and that's why it's important to know these things, because for a long time, the division was between us. Even myself, at times, I felt out of place. Though I felt as though we were kin, I felt out of place going back and forth between the inner city and the country life, knowing the difference between the two, being around both northern tribes, growing up around northern tribes, growing up around the southern kingdom. I know the difference. I remember I think it was Apostle Abraham Lab. He was like, it was one of the apostles, maybe Apostle Har, where he was like, in order for you to know the tribes, you have to be around them. And I actually experienced that growing up because most of my best friends were of the northern tribes. We just meshed perfectly. We got along perfectly. But then when it came down to Judah, we had a lot of tension. You know what I'm saying? I had a lot of tension with Judah because, we was, in the hood, in the inner cities, it was mainly heavily Judah. And, we had to fight to be friends a lot, a lot of the time, But that just going to the division that was among us, And so I know the difference between all of them. I have a few Judites in my family, a few Benjaminites. Actually, my great grandmother, Benjaminite woman. But my father's fathers, they Seminoles. My grandmother's fathers, Seminoles. My cousins, that's on my dad's side, they Seminoles. And I have cousins that get with Judite men, and so on and so forth, man. So I've been around pretty much most of the tribes coming up as a kid on up to now. So I know the difference. All right. Verse 12. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Notice when it comes down to gathering or being scattered, it's always mentioned in Israel. All right, because one thing, when you start to read this book with understanding, you realize it's all about the Israelites. It's all about us, You gotta know how to discern when it mentions the children of Ephraim, all right, or the children of Israel, and then the children of Judah. You gotta know what it's talking about, because that's talking about that split that came, okay? Because it goes on and says in the 13th verse, and notice how the Lord said He's gonna gather, all right, Israel, and then the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Because we're scattered, man. James 1:1. Greetings to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad. All right? To the 12 tribes that are scattered abroad, greetings. That's pretty much what he said, roughly paraphrasing what he said. Because James knew that all of us were scattered, man. Through what? Captivity, slavery, bondage. We all eventually was removed out of the Most High's sight, which is the land of Israel, by what? Captivity. Being disobedient, not keeping the covenant, which is the laws, commandments, statutes, and judgments. And the Heavenly Father sent our enemies against us, and they removed us from off our lands of captivity. They took us away captives. Okay? Verse 13. The envy also of Ephraim shall depart, and the adversaries of Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not vex Ephraim. Yeah, because that's going back to Jeroboam and Rehoboam. All the infighting. All right, all the infighting that was going on. The whole nation know that Judah the lead tribe, but Jeroboam, because he was set over the house of Joseph, he felt as though he should be ruling over Israel. And that was great contention between the two. Okay. Now, when you go into the book of Hebrews, the 8th chapter, when it talks about the covenants, all right, who is this mentioning? Is it mentioning the heathen? The natural Gentiles? Of course not. But watch who it mentions. Hebrews 8:8. Well, I'll start at 7. For if their first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. For finding fault with them, he said, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. See, that's the Heavenly Father bringing back the two kingdoms, bringing them together to make them one kingdom. All right. What is that talking about? The house of Israel and the house of Judah. Let's go back to Ezekiel, the 37th chapter. All right. Let's see, bear with me 1 second. I want to get the part. It says we should be one nation. All right, let's go. Matter of fact, let's start with the sign, because it mentions the sign. Verse Ezekiel 37, and I'll start to go to the point. 19. Say unto them, thus saith the Lord of power, behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, his fellows, and will put them with him, even with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in my hand, and the sticks whereon thou writest shall be in thine hand before their eyes. All right, so pretty much the Heavenly Father was making us one. All right, he making us one nation, one nation in the sight of the heathen. All right, that's why it makes no sense for Esau to be saying the black Hebrew Israelites. But what about the Latin tribes? What about us so-called natives? All right. I know it's in that same chapter. I overlooked trying to skim read. Shalakia. Jump down to the 22nd verse. Here we go. It says, and I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king to them all, and they shall be no more two nations, neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms anymore at all. So that's why the covenant, which the second covenant, all right, was made to who? The same people, Israelites. First covenant, found in the book of Exodus, the 19th chapter, that was made to Israelites. And then the second covenant, which I'm reading in the book of Hebrews, the 8th chapter, verse 8, it speaks about who? The two kingdoms coming together, still being, made, a covenant between the Heavenly Father and his children, all right? Which is the Israelites, all right? It says, for finding fault with them, he said, behold, the day is come, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, Salakia. Because let me start it over. I was all tongue-tied. It says, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith the Lord. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws in their mind and write them in their hearts, and will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. So, that's the reason why the covenant mentioned the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Okay? The split. All right? The split. And when you when you look at the fact that, what's that, Jeremiah 50 and 33, it says the children of Judah. Let's get there real quick. My break is almost up, Shalakia. Jeremiah 50 and 33, thus saith Yahweh of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go. See? And that's who you see in the ghettos together. All the corners of the earth have what in it? Israelites. All right, I'm gonna keep saying it, man, because you gotta know what the word corner means. Corner means slum, a ghetto, or a lower state of living. All right, now ask yourself, who in society fits that living situation or level of living? The so-called Negro, Latino, Native Americans. All right. Verse 34. Their Redeemer is strong. Yahweh of hosts is his name. He shall thoroughly plead their cause, that he may give rest to the land and disquiet the inhabitants of Babylon. Yeah, because we're in Babylon the Great, also known as the virgin daughter of Babylon, which is so-called America, man. And then knowing the meaning that America means bitter or bitterness, who's it been bitter to? All right. And that's why it's a beautiful thing to see all the 12 tribes on the highways and hedges and on the corners teaching the words of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shah in truth. The ones that are teaching in truth. All right. And not holding back, but giving, 100% doctrine. All right, so with that, Lord willing, you are edified. I got to get back in here to work. Shlaki, I wanted to address it. I just put it up raw. So, Lord willing, it was edifying to you. And until next time, I say shalom.